So we're now going to go into a Q&A for Stephen and Tom. So yeah, if anything, you can still ask questions as we're going through the Q&A. If you scan the code on Slido there, or go to the web link. Here's the book that you can win. Again, we've already had 2 winners. I'm actually getting quite interested in this book now, so I don't know if I'll be able to nick a copy at the end of the day. So yeah, questions. Let's have a look at what's been upvoted. Okay, so this one looks like it'll be for you, Tom. I use Strava to record my short rural local commute. How can we encourage more users to do this to improve the value of data for decision makers? So yeah, Tom, I'll come to you first on this one.
Yeah, great question, Emma. Thank you for asking that. I think it comes back to the power of the community. One of the things that's made Strava so successful over the last kind of 10, 15 years has been that kind of keeping people active. We know that, for example, when people upload an activity onto Strava or when they scroll through Strava, the feed, they're more likely to spend about 30 minutes of physical activity or be inspired to take a commute. So I think one of the ways that you can encourage the community is to, actually embed routes around your local community. Perhaps it's on a local council website, maybe it's on the local bicycle advocacy groups, maybe even putting kind of QR codes at the start of popular routes into town. Say, log your journey on Strava, and of course, you're contributing to the Metro data set as well. Part of my role is then obviously to make sure we're showing that value, but I would caveat it by saying we need to do more around representativeness to make sure people trust the data source as well.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Tom. And Stephen, I guess we can link this back to what you were talking about, the challenge of these sort of 1.5 million homes being built. I guess a lot of these are going to be sort of sub-rural communities potentially. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this in terms of sort of those rural communities capturing the data? Yeah.
Yes, the University of Hertfordshire, where I worked, has been doing a lot of work on transport in rural areas. With Transport East, we've been doing round tables on that, and I think addressing Aileen's question as well about pay per mile and rural, I think firstly the current transport system it isn't great for people in rural areas now because they're kind of dependent on cars, and they that they have to spend out a lot now. I think you can. In relation to new house building that you asked about, there's a lot of work. What's happening at the moment is a lot of very car dependent developments. That's not essential, it's not inevitable. Create Streets with Transport for New Homes and Sustrans have just done a report on how you could make new house building in Chippenham, in Wiltshire, sort of an any town kind of place, genuinely sustainable and actually involve reducing car use, car commuting and CO2, while still getting lots of new houses built. So it's possible to do this, but we'll need to do something about integrating, when you plan new developments, to think about transport, which is what happens in other countries. I've just been to the Netherlands. That's what you do. You put in, when they plan a new development, they put in a tram line or a train line first, and then the new development happens around it. And here we put in the new development and then wonder why everybody's driving. So I think there are opportunities to do something about that. In relation to pay per mile, there are different structures for this. People have talked about giving people in rural areas a kind of free mileage area, but actually Mobility Ways has done a lot of work on, even in rural areas, how you can reduce car commuting. I know that Ali presented recently at one of our round tables, that in some cases with hospitals, they've been able to chart how you could make it much easier for people to reduce single occupancy car commuting for employment. So it's possible to do something about travel in rural areas. It's just that everybody assumes that the buses have all disappeared, the trains have all disappeared, so everybody has to drive, and that's not actually true.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Something for Strava there, I think, seeing opportunity. So next question that's gone to the top. Many are deterred from cycling due to the state of roads, potholes, etc. how can employers encourage local government authorities to be proactive in maintaining these? That is from Harriet. Stephen, shall I go to you again?
Start with me, but I'm sure Tom's got some views on this too. I mean, one of the problems we've got is that we've tended to build new roads and rather than maintain what we've got. Again, there are models which make this work. You can have longer term contracts. You can have frameworks for doing for maintaining roads properly, and it's a matter of long term funding for local authorities. In the days when Transport for London had money, they did deals with sort of consortia of London boroughs to set up long-term road maintenance commitments, and then that all disappeared, and that's why the London roads are in such a mess. But it should be possible to do that. Actually, I think there's a really good way to do this. In France, you notice that there are a lot of roads that don't have any potholes at all. That's because that's where the Tour de France goes, so they maintain the roads. So maybe we just need more cycle touring routes in the UK, and maybe we'll get some better maintained roads. That's not an entirely serious proposition, but actually we do need to have a much better road maintenance regime here.
I think that's a good idea, Stephen. So yeah, Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, a huge plus one to that idea of more kind of cycle touring, but I think there is a kind of a serious point to that in terms of, you know, obviously perhaps obviously employers may well be targeted or getting kind of staff to start looking at kind of commuting and having a private sector employees or private or even any kind of sector employers actually advocating for better roads and kind of saying, you know, we want to see more people cycling, but this is the feedback. But I think fundamentally from a Strava point of view, it probably comes down to the funding point of view. If you can measure it, you can actually then justify the actual impact and the investment needed. So again, I'd go back to the data point that the Strava Metro data would be able to show that, you know, there's a X number of cyclists that are coming through here, and behind all of those numbers is actual people, you know, who are cycling on there. The other thing I would just quickly say as well is on the community choice. You often see from the Strava heat map and the Strava data is actually the route that some people kind of take. It's often, like I say, the desire line. So where there is a road in a terrible state, you might then see a huge amount of activity coming off that section of road and onto a side road. So again, you can start to understand what are the people's kind of choice of doing these routes as well. You often find that active transport is willing to kind of pay a distance tax to go a slightly longer way, maybe an extra kilometre or two, for a safer and better quality of ride. But ideally, we would have better roads.
Yeah, no, definitely. The data is key there. I agree, Tom. So Tom and Stephen, thank you so much for the Q&A and for your sessions this morning. It was really, really informative. So yeah.